All right, well, it's great to see everyone here. We've been working on this for quite a while, and it's just fantastic to see so many familiar faces and folks that have been in the industry for a long time and are looking forward to define the future of the global networking. So I just wanted to provide a few numbers behind the audience, the registrants for the event. We, as of yesterday, we were above 1,130 registrants, so we're probably about 1,150 plus now. And as you can see, there's a pretty good mix across the landscape in terms of the service providers, the vendors, the business, government, and defense registrants. But one of the most impressive things about this number is the number of organizations that are represented. 360 different organizations around the world, 36 plus countries have signed up. So there's a wide range of experts that you're going to be able to engage with, network with here at GEN14. And just to kind of give you a little bit of color on the professional level of folks involved in the event, service end users, service providers, and network solutions vendors are in the range of about 22 to 23% are at the VP level or above. Another 26% or 25% are at the director or senior director level, and then about 50% or so are at the manager, senior manager, and other professional levels. So one of the things I wanted to do is just kind of have a level set of where we are. What's the starting point for GEN14? And really, if you think about it, Carrier Ethernet dominates the wide area network and it enables the cloud. That's the starting point for the whole event. 1,000 plus network operators using Carrier Ethernet technology, many of them using, of course, the certified Carrier Ethernet 1.0 and 1.2 technologies. Tens of thousands of businesses and organizations around the world are using these Ethernet services. It's generating a $40+ billion market with double-digit growth rates, still impressive growth rates, even after being available for a decade. Extraordinary performance price advantages is really what has driven Ethernet adoption over time, and that remains actually in the wholesale market. Expanded service coverage. Many of the service providers that are attending this event have been investing heavily in taking Ethernet to more locations and rolling out Ethernet in much more efficient ways and focused on taking that to the next level. That's been obviously a key growth driver. And what we've seen, particularly over the last 2 or 3 years, is an accelerated shift from TDM and legacy services over to Carrier Ethernet. We've also seen a number of companies that had been purchasing IP VPN services also look at moving towards Ethernet. And of course, Carrier Ethernet 2.0 is the gold standard. You'll hear more about Carrier Ethernet 2.0. Many of you are coming from MEF's Carrier Ethernet 2.0 certified service providers or technology vendors. So the focus of GEN14 is really on what we call the paradigm shift towards the cloud-centric services. And those services are going to be much more scalable, much more dynamic, customized, and available everywhere. And the goal, of course, of these services is to help service end users and service providers control their cost and boost their productivity. So whether you're a retail service end user or a wholesale customer, this is what it's all about, making the market much more efficient. What can we do as an industry to drive things forward? And we're also looking at the new enabling technologies. How do they come together? What kind of standards efforts have to be in place to drive the market forward? And those technologies that we'll be discussing at the event obviously are going to be Carrier Ethernet 2.0, NFV, SDN, and optical technologies. Okay, and then, of course, we'll get into the whole topic of service orchestration, which is so critical to getting over this chasm that exists with the OSS systems. So the key industry questions that we want to address at GEN14 is really, what is this pace of shift towards more dynamic services? We all pretty much agree on this vision. Surveys that we've done and people that we've talked to, it's about 99% of people agree that we're moving in that direction of much more dynamic services delivered over much more efficient networks. But the real question is, what's the pace of the shift? And we'll get into that in a number of the sessions later on. What's the expectation versus the reality? We have 1,000 plus operators using Carrier Ethernet technology. Many of them are exploring SDN and NFV. but really you've got a couple of dozen companies that are sort of at that forefront of the trials and demos with SDN and NFV. So how do you benefit most from the transformation? If you're a service end user, what can you expect will be available in the market, and when will it be available? If you're a service provider, what new technologies can you take advantage of today that will help you get to where you want to be tomorrow? And then how does the service and technology ecosystem really work together? What are the pieces of the puzzle that will shape that new networking environment? And how do you make sense of all the standards development initiatives? Many of the folks here in the audience attended the Dusseldorf conference about a month ago, the SDN and NFV conference. And one of the comments I heard from one of the folks that really has been involved in driving the industry forward is, it's really difficult to make sense of all the standards initiatives. What are people working on? What's real? And all that. So we're going to hopefully shed light on that here. We have a standards breakfast discussion, for example, on Wednesday morning. And then really, how does the data center cloud content story come together with the wide area network? We have a number of panels that are dealing with that topic as well. And beyond that, what's the real world impact of NFV and SDN? What's the cost savings picture look like? What does it look like from a revenue point of view? What's near term versus longer term? And then how does that change the service and technology landscape? What kind of business transformation is going to take place when you can combine these technologies together in that much more dynamic services environment? What new business models emerge? And then obviously one of the key things that we're focused on from the MEF point of view, and also bringing the different organizations together, is to really focus on the value of the network. What can you do with a network that is much more responsive and dynamic? And then of course, once you have everything connected, how do you secure that network? We have a great session on this on Wednesday, and I think that's going to be a critical topic as we move forward. So just real quickly at a glance, today, I would encourage everybody to use the mobile app that Kevin mentioned. That should be pretty up to date. You can also go to the website if that's more convenient for you. We have the plenary session this morning. We have a split track in the afternoon with enterprise and government topics, as well as service provider and operator networking topics. And of course, the cocktail reception and the awards dinner tonight. And Wednesday, again, we'll start with a plenary session in the morning. Well, actually, after the breakfast update session I mentioned on the standards initiatives. Then we'll go into 3 different tracks. So we'll introduce the wholesale topic there in the middle, and then we'll have the cocktail reception and the proof of concept showcase also in the evening. And then on Thursday, we'll have a single timeline, which will start with a breakfast session with industry initiatives, update in the morning, dealing with wholesale topics, as well as the interconnection topics in small cell, and then we'll move into other technology topics, including mobile backhaul, and end with sessions on market strategy and investor opportunities. For the next keynote talk, Chen, many of you know Nan as the pioneer for carrier Ethernet. Nan introduced me to the topic more than a decade ago, and I thank you very much, Nan, for doing that. Of course, he has a leadership position in Phoenix right now, but he's been well recognized as one of the leading marketing experts in the entire industry, and he's taking us forward and going to share with us the vision for what the future looks like. So, Nan, come on up.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. When I did an introduction, thank you, Stan, did the introduction, carrier Ethernet to Stan, I was 16. I just want to make sure I made that clear. He said the decade sounds like so long ago. Anyway, so welcome everybody. I wanted to first of all give you a kind of quick update on what we're really working on here today at the MEF, and what we see the future's like, and how we actually transition from what we have today and going to the future. So we have a full agenda today. I want to make sure that we get everything started in the right pace. Okay. So what do we really want? I mean, if you think of it, the things that has happened in the industry, think the things really moving industry forward. And what is really boiled down to is what we're really looking for, what we're really expecting out of the future. So in the future, we really like to see we can discover all new different applications, and they're available instantaneously. And we want to really have that in the blinding speed. Whenever you want it, it's going to be there, the network everywhere. Also, I'm willing to pay for the services if we really wanted to have that performance and security guarantees. So in order to do that, so we're basically saying we want to have a perfect QoS, always on and no excuses. That's what we're really looking for. Now, so what kind of network it'd be possible to deliver that kind of service where always on, where you can pay for the premium service? And today, there's two modern data networks, which, as we all know and love. One of them is the internet, which we all use everywhere. And it gave you the on-demand ubiquity where you can access the internet anywhere. But the only issue associated with that is a service. There's no service assurance, not performance, not security, which is obviously a problem. You have to address that through VPN or encryption and so on and so forth, leaving up to users to deal with that. And then we have a Carrier Ethernet 2.0 networks, which have an incredible performance guarantee as well as the security, but lack the agility. So what we're saying is, imagine a new type of network service which combine the best of the both worlds. So in other words, remove all the limitations of a lack of agility and service assurance, delivers internet-like agility and ubiquity with Carrier Ethernet 2.0 like performance and guarantees. So we at MEF call this the third network. So third that means the internet, and then the Carrier Ethernet, now you have a third network. So the third network is really the fundamental of the third network is have the ability to deliver agile services that is assured both from the performance perspective as well as the security perspective, and is orchestrated throughout multiple carriers. So it's a really big step in terms of deliver that guaranteed service we're looking for. So let's just indulge ourselves a little bit, see what the impact is on our daily lives. So one of the things we see today, if you in the hotel rooms and you're working with your coworkers in the office, and here's a basically setup for today. So when you're in the office, you probably have internet access, but also more importantly, you have a dedicated network connecting all your offices together, which hopefully running out C 2.0 networks. And then if you're at home, you're connecting through internet, and so is here if you actually in the hotel rooms. So the idea here really is, well, this is a good, except that then if you actually out of office, then you don't have the guarantees. And the SLAs seems to be associated with the physical units or physical locations rather than individualized or follow with you. So the idea here is that would it be possible that the SLAs potentially be personalized instead of has to be associated with the location where you're going to be. So the idea is that would it be possible to have an app on your mobile phone or have a button on your PC or your Mac where you click on it, say connecting to the third network, which allow you to be able to connecting to a secured and performance guaranteed network service, and from your hotels or from your homes, and also from the office, whereby you can run applications which need the guarantee. For example, maybe the WebEx application you're trying to present to your customers or your suppliers or your partners, or maybe the GoToMeeting, or maybe you want to have a high video conferencing, FaceTime or whatever it is with your family members, your loved ones. That would give you that ability to do that. So this is serve two things. One is that people like myself, and then I see this application, I can certainly willing to pay for it, actually pay for the service, not only just the usage, but potentially we're actually paying the access as well. So on the flip side of people who provide the service, would have the opportunity to be able to make more money on an MRC basis, giving the carriers additional way to actually making money to be able to help to advance, not only the network technology itself and giving a better coverage for everybody and improve the network performance when there's money there. But in general speaking, it's really helping choices people have. Today, we don't have much choice, and through the internet, that's about all we have, and that which is a lack of the performance and also lack of the security, so which is a problem. Well, we have some really great building blocks to actually make this happen. So CE 2.0, which I mentioned, because it's really important to leverage the network already in the ground to be able to deliver the service. And then we have the NFVs and SDNs, and also those are building blocks. If you think about it, an NFV and SDN, they also is really concerned with the control and management of infrastructure, not necessarily the services people are buying and selling, but those are incredible building blocks, and we see that in the industry, and the momentum is there. Separately or collectively, they may not necessarily have enough. So what else is missing? I think there is other things that we felt like was clearly is not there. What else do we need? And we have this incredible chasm in terms of the OSS, BSS, whereby it not only doesn't have a standards for automation, but also doesn't have ability to innovate really fast. And that's becoming really the barriers for us to really innovate fast within the carrier as well as between the carriers around the world, and which obviously we intend to fix that, the chasm. So what is really needed for us to move forward, to meet our expectations, to deliver the technical capabilities or standards among the carriers to be able to deliver the third network vision, which we talked about? And here's the answer. We at MEF really believe that in order to make carriers to be able to move forward away from the all the custom build OSS, BSS, we really need to embrace a new paradigm, which what we call it lifecycle service orchestration, or LSOs. And LSOs is really the fundamental shift in terms of the thinking behind how do you power the overall next generation of a third network or the overall development of the technology and services. And many people in the NFV and an SDN world, and then if you look at the things that has been done, is really trying to say, okay, well, we're gonna make sure the infrastructure doing the way we're supposed to do, but let someone else worry about the OSS, BSS, and just kick the ball. Say, well, because it was virtualized and used to be physical, now it's virtualized. It's the same thing, but clearly that's not true, and is such a fallacy that I think people start to recognize in the fundamental change, not only at the infrastructure layer, but also at the OSS, BSS layer. And one of the key things to make this happen is we believe you define modularized the lifecycle service orchestration to allow you to innovate fast within each of the carriers and also between the carriers when you build APIs. So there are basically 8 different functions within LSO. They're still being defined within MEF, but we are obviously very passionate about to actually taking very aggressive step. And if you think of today's problem associated with the lack of agility on the network itself, it is we need to define a new way to manage the network, to control the network, and LSO is the answer to that. So as this diagram is actually illustrated, it's sitting on top of the NFV and SDN, and also existing infrastructure. Don't forget that, because it's a lot of times when people talk about the new technology, they forgot there's billions of dollars already invested in the existing infrastructure delivering what we have today. And we want to make sure that happens as well. We can automate that process, automate that infrastructure to deliver the third network services. So this is what we're seeing, what's happened here. And if you look at the overall landscape, and we has been working with other standards organizations, specifically two, which is ONF and as well as the ETSI. The idea here is we united the entire industry behind this third network initiative to allow us to be able to have a common goal and collaborative effort. And if you see the on the left-hand side, we have ONF, SDN, that's their diagram in terms of the architecture. And whereby it's really sitting, the SDN controllers or application really sitting about the infrastructure control and the management, as well as the element control and the management layer. So does NFVO, which is manual layer, whereby actually controlling and as well as the doing the things, we believe is fundamentally setting up the VMs as well as the instantiate the initial configurations, if you would, using that as an example. But actually the service itself, people, you and I buy, is initiated or instantiated by the LSO, which is the block diagram in the middle. There may be multiple layers of that. One layer could be within the carrier, there will be LSO. Then there is one end-to-end LSO, which is between the two endpoints of the services. So we obviously feel that this is fundamentally is going to change the industry in terms of how the on-demand services being delivered or enabled being delivered. And then also fundamentally we want to leverage the industry of scale in terms of really propel the industry changing the OSS and BSS. Instead of everybody building customized, we wanted that have a building blocks that actually can go coming off the shelf and have a standard interface among them. So the takeaway of this conference we have on GEN14 is really about three things. One is the third network, which is we feel like be able to deliver the industry or the world really demanding on the internet-like agility, ubiquity, with the carrier Ethernet-like performance and security assurance. And the enabler of that is the LSO, which is MEF actively working on and working with other organizations as well. And the three pillars, which is fundamentally making the third network possible. That's LSO, SDN, and NFV. So I wanted to just point out a couple other things in terms of why you are invited and why you're here. So obviously, we want to create the future of global networking. And I think so many of you are MEF members and some of them are not, and really encourage you to be part of the overall momentum, the movement to move industry forward, to have that guaranteed services delivered anywhere, whenever we want it. Want to discuss the possibilities and explore the next steps, which is obviously really important. And last but not least is really the fostered collaboration of innovation. It is really critical for us as a community to be able to work together to actually move things forward. And I always believe in that in terms of innovation. That's why we're here. Really, hopefully every one of you getting something out of this conference and enjoy, being part of the overall movement of delivering the third network. Now, speaking of innovation and creativity, I wanted to introduce you to obviously one of the luminary in our industry, and next keynote speaker here. His name is Bob Metcalfe. For those of you who doesn't know, he obviously has been driving force in our networking industry and has been the inventor of Ethernet, which, as you all know, also the founder of 3Com and took the company public. And after 10 years of doing that, he started a 10-year journey on being a venture capitalist. And then after 10 years of that, he started the new journey a couple years ago, becoming a professor of innovation. But one thing in common, he's really been our advisor director since 2003, and it really has been a guiding light for us to move things forward in the industry as well as the MEF. So there's numerous or myriad accolades Bob has received throughout his career. But one of the, obviously the most important one, I would say, is the one in 2005, Bob received the National Medal of Technology for leadership in invention, standardization, and communication of Ethernet. So without further ado, let's put our hands together, welcome Bob Metcalfe.
So welcome to GEN14. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to be here with my people, fellow network plumbers. It's not often that I see so many plumbers in one room at the same time. And I'd like to thank Nan. Nan usually rolls me out now and then. He doesn't pay me, by the way, just in case you're wondering. I just jump at the chance to come to MEF events and opine. So I've got 20 minutes to opine. Would that be all right with you? Thank you. So in general, I'm here to profess innovation. That's my job. I'm a professor of innovation. And I view the carrier Ethernet platform as a very important platform in innovation. As you just heard, I invented Ethernet. That's only true for certain values of I, invented, and Ethernet, depending on what you mean by each of those three words. There are actually, since the Ethernet is now at least 41 years old, there are hundreds of people who have invented Ethernet, and I claim to be just one of them, although my wife asks what I've done for y'all lately. So it turns out I'm a member of a club of people who have invented interconnects. And this club has such people, or the inventor of Ethernet, of course, but also the inventor of token ring, and he stopped coming. The inventor of USB, HDMI, DVI, VGA, SCSI, and then of course the grand old man, the inventor of RS-232C, also attends. And we recently had a meeting and it was a little sad because the inventor of USB had died. So we arranged a funeral, and all of the pallbearers were the interconnect inventors, and we carried his coffin to the grave. And we all reverently lowered it in and realized that we had to take it out and rotate it 180 degrees and then lower it in again. Now, the inventor of Wi-Fi does not attend these meetings because, first of all, there's no plug, and we can't agree who invented Wi-Fi. I mean, Wi-Fi goes back to the Aloha network in 1970, a packet radio network that led eventually to Ethernet. And in the Ethernet invention memo of '73, the word radio Ethernet is mentioned. But it took 20 more years for Wi-Fi to arrive, and a lot of innovation students have wondered, why didn't you just go straight to Wi-Fi in 1970? And the answer, of course, is we didn't have the chips. Moore's law hadn't kicked in, and a 4,800 bit per second radio was as big as a microwave oven. And we needed to run at megabits per second, so we couldn't afford to go wireless in 1970, but eventually got around to it as the innovation machine, as Moore's law ground away. We eventually got back to wireless in the 90s. I did not invent the RJ45. I wonder who did. We have to invite that person to our club. But I have worked for a long time on what I call the Ethernet model, which I'm going to summarize right now. And I view it as the Ethernet model is a model for innovation. It is the model, I think, which is underneath the activities of MEF and this conference. And the model begins with the Internet. Ethernet was designed knowing where it fit in the TCP/IP model of the Internet. It was packet-oriented, for example. The Ethernet model begins with a de jure standard, 802.3, for example. But that standard, the implementations of that standard are not open source. They are owned. So 3Com owned the designs of its Ethernet controllers that it used to sell. But then what follows is fierce competition, really fierce competition among the makers. I always like to see whenever there's a panel and they have both Cisco and Juniper on stage. Isn't it great to watch them go at each other? And that's part of this Ethernet fierce competition. But that competition is moderated. You're not allowed to compete by being incompatible. That is, the Ethernet model, the marketplace, the customers require that the competition be in the context of interoperability. And then there's rapid evolution, where the innovation occurs based on market interaction, but that evolution is itself constrained by a need to be backward compatible, because being backward compatible has many benefits, as recently quantified by what I call Metcalfe's law. And then there's the build it and they will come ethic, that in the models, we build networks ahead of the requirements. At the Xerox Research Center in 1973, on one day I had 300 baud modem, by the way, an acoustic modem, on my desk, and the next day I had 2.94 megabits per second Ethernet, and I can assure you there was no requirements document showing that we needed 2.94 megabits per second. We just built it as fast as we could reasonably using the chips available to us at the time. So that's the Ethernet model that I think is at work here. One of the things I've learned from that model is the efficacy of what I call FOCACA. FOCACA, F-O-C-A-C-A, which is not Yiddish. It's an acronym, FOCACA. Freedom of choice among competing alternatives. Freedom of choice among competing alternatives, FOCACA. That is the principal lesson, I think, of the model, the Ethernet model, over these decades. So as I mentioned, I'm not using PowerPoint. PowerPoint was a great innovation. I was on the board of the company that developed PowerPoint. We sold it to Microsoft in 1987 for $14 million. Was that the last great innovation on the internet? More recently, we've seen social, mobile, cloud. Were those the last innovations on the internet? Is the internet done? Can we relax? Is it time now to control and regulate and divvy up the internet because the innovation is over? It's now time to harvest the internet. Is the internet done? Do you think the internet is done? No. Yeah, that's an obvious answer. That was a softball question for y'all. Well, let me point out there are 3 new internets in the works in parallel, even as we stand here. I call them the gigabit, the virtualized, and the things internet. Let's talk about the gigabit internet. Initially in the 60s and 70s, we had the kilobit internet, where the killer app was remote login in an interactive teletype session. And then later we migrated in the 80s and 90s to the megabit internet, where we got the World Wide Web. And we are now migrating to the gigabit internet. That is where gigabit is commonly available. The gigabit is now currently available at some homes in Austin, Texas, in Kansas City, in other places. It's coming. What's really interesting is that pace of migration from the megabit to the gigabit internet is paced by semiconductors, the availability of chips out of the semiconductor industry, according to Moore's law. And one of the big questions, and this question is being pursued hotly by US Ignite, which is a National Science Foundation project. US Ignite is asking the question, what will the killer app be of the gigabit internet? What applications not currently possible will be enabled by the arrival of the gigabit internet? The next internet, number 2, is I'm calling the virtualized internet, and that's of course the subject of this conference, CE 2.0, with the third network. By the way, Nan, some of us who have been around longer, this is actually the 237th network. You've just started renumbering again back at 3. So here we are basically standardizing the control plane of the internet at long last, so as to allow for bandwidth on demand, interconnection of carriers, and that's the second new internet that we're working on demand, settled, interconnected with security and QoS. And I believe this network, which we're busily standardizing now, will improve competition, which will drive innovation, will lead to elasticity of availability of bandwidth, and therefore new innovations over the top. And then there's the third new network that's coming. And I've heard about, you've all heard of the Internet of Things. But I spent last week in a hotel in Hawaii with the semiconductor industry, which, as you know, has existed since roughly the year I was born, 1946, and is now a $300 billion a year industry. And they met in Hawaii to review progress on their chips. I remember 3Com's, my company's big breakthrough was a chip, the first Ethernet chip that we developed, enabled us to squeeze Ethernet onto a PC. The semiconductor industry was asking itself, is Moore's Law going to continue? And they're worried. The problem is that the semiconductor feature sizes have gone from a micron to 45 nanometers, and now Intel is shipping 14 nanometer scale processors. And the cost of the lithography and the fabs for building 14 nanometer feature size semiconductors is now in the billions of dollars. So a big problem they have in their innovation stream is what to do with these very expensive fabs. And of course, one of the remedies is to consolidate. So now we're back down to 3 or 4 or 5 big chip fabricators in the world. But on the other hand, the conference was full of good news about innovation in lithography, large wafers. The wafers are getting to be about this big now. About 3D devices, 3D packaging, about much lower power and so on. But what's really striking about the meeting was the new market that the semiconductor industry thinks it's about to address. And that new market they call the Internet of Things. This is the third innovation, the third new internet that's coming along. Of course, the Internet of Things is, as you know, is a buzzword, sort of a placeholder until we can figure out what those things are. The lists at the semiconductor conference were wearables, automotive, healthcare, in which the devices, the leaves of the internet are now getting smaller and smaller, counted in the trillions. There were projections at this conference that they would soon be making trillions of chips to serve the coming Internet of Things. Incidentally, the bottleneck in the semiconductor industry is how long it takes to design a chip. So to design it, to even get a chip made takes 12 weeks. So if you're a startup trying to innovate, you've got a 12-week cycle time in your innovation cycle. I think that's the bottleneck semiconductor industry will have to overcome. So is the internet done? No, it's not done. It's not time to control and regulate and tax the internet. This meeting that you all are attending is sort of the opposite meeting. It's the meeting that should be happening instead of network neutrality. So I guess 20 minutes from here, there's a neutrality meeting going on in which the Federal Communications Commission is being asked by the White House to invade this party we're having here. And they don't remember, these people are too young. They don't remember when the FCC used to run the internet. When I used to have an acoustic coupler on my terminal because no one was allowed to connect devices to the telephone network directly because it was too dangerous. No one remembers, these people down at the White House, they don't remember when my mom said, when you get to college, call. Let the phone ring 3 times and hang up, because she couldn't afford to have me actually talk to her on the damn phone. So the folks who are playing ball with the neutrality, like my friends at Google, a brilliant company. They don't realize they're playing with fire. They're inviting the government to come in and regulate the internet into this group right here, 300 or 400 or 500 carriers. The reason I say they don't know what they're doing and they're playing with fire is, how long do you think it will take the government to realize that maybe it's not fair that people pay to have an ad put their message on the front screen of Google? Maybe someone will decide Google needs to be regulated, because that's not fair. Maybe ads should be placed on that page by lottery for free. Anyway, Google is playing with fire downtown. Anyway, it's time to end. Welcome to Gen14. Welcome to CE 2.0, to the third network. Thank you very much.